Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Nessie's Dead, the show where we plunge into the darkest sides of life, exploring our darkest curiosities.
We're gonna dive into this case now, huh?
We are. We're going to take a deep plunge. I'm your host, Spencer.
And I'm Helen.
Boom, boom, boom. And I am so excited. Very excited for this case, actually. This is one that I do not think you're familiar with. I think I've brought it up to you once, like a year ago when I discovered it. Okay, so for the first case I covered, we went to Los Angeles and had a fabulous stay at the Cecil Hotel.
We did.
This time, shockingly enough, we're not going to LA. It's nowhere in the States. We're actually going to be going down to Brazil.
Oh, okay. So that's different. Let's see what Brazil has.
Yes. So this case, we're going to start off in a district of Rio de Janeiro called Niterói. And also, I do not speak Portuguese. So any of the Brazilian names or titles or places or the Portuguese words that I say are probably going to be pretty butchered, but I'm going to do my best. Okay, so this all starts in Niterói of Rio de Janeiro on Morro do Vintém, which means the Vintém Hill. It all starts when a young boy, George, was out flying a kite and he starts to smell this horrible smell in the air. He follows that smell and stumbles upon two dead bodies. The dead bodies are well-dressed in black suits, raincoats, and found laying next to them were masks. These masks were made of solid lead. And they weren't like masquerade masks. They were like glasses. So think like lead eyewear.
That's the oddest thing I've ever heard. Well, it's not the oddest thing I've ever heard, but that's very like, who stumbles across people in suits with lead glasses? Okay. Intriguing.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's only going to get more intriguing. Alongside the lead masks were an empty water bottle, a packet of towelettes, and a note. This note, and a few $1,000s.
Oh, okay.
This note read instructions. These instructions, this was in Portuguese, so I'm going to read the translated version. 4:30 p.m. Be at the determined place. 6:30 p.m. Swallow capsules. After effect. Protect metals. Wait for mask signal.
Is this like some government stuff, maybe? Or am I jumping the gun here?
You might be jumping, but there is not much. There does not seem to be much government affiliation with this case at all. I do think some government stuff might come into play towards the end, but I do not think that this specifically has anything to do government, personally.
Okay. It just sounds very odd, like specific.
Super specific and super cryptic. And very weird, but it only gets weirder because also on this note, it had a mathematical equation for Ohm's law. So I'm not super familiar with anything that's math. I can barely do simple addition. But the Ohm's law is the equation for it. It's, well, that's okay. We're still cool.
We're fine. We have calculators in our back pockets now.
Yes. Well, the Ohm's law, the equation is E equals IR. So I was like, I don't know what the hell Ohm's law is. I don't know what E, I, R, any of that is. So to kind of try to describe that, the definition of this Ohm's law is that it states electric currents are proportional to the voltage and proportional to resistance. So that was also written on this note.
Interesting. That's way above my head.
Yeah, I mean, everything in this case is about to go way over our heads. I'm so excited. Okay, so these bodies, they were pretty decomposed, so it was really hard to determine what happened to them. However, authorities and the coroner, they were able to say that there's no obvious sign of trauma. They were not beaten to death, no gunshot wound, no stab, no slitting throats, nothing like that. So there was no obvious trauma done to the body, but they couldn't figure out any other potentials of why these people died. Another strange thing about the area, is that the grass around where they were laying seemed to have been cut down with a knife. It's very like bluntly, not like freshly cut or anything. It was cut bluntly at the tops.
Interesting. Was it so that maybe the bodies would be discovered sooner?
I don't think so. We'll get into what that could be related to a little bit
Okay.
later.
Okay.
But first, who are these men? They
Yeah.
were two they were two electronic repairmen. One of them was Manuel de Cruz and the other was Miguel Jose Villana. Both of them, like I said, were electronic repairmen from Campos. Their bodies were discovered in Rio. This is about 175 miles away from their town that they lived in, of Campos. So that is also very odd.
How far away in?
175 miles or so.
Oh, okay. So they had ventured out.
Yeah, they weren't like, I can't figure out any reasonable reason they would have appeared in this area because they're nowhere near their town.
Do they have vehicles that were found, or is it like this kind of area is like a walking, biking kind of get around area?
Well, we'll actually get to that.
Oh, okay. I'm jumping the gun again.
You are. So, with that being said, let's retrace our steps a little bit. So, they were discovered on August 20th. So, let's go back to August 16th.
Okay.
Also, I think I forgot to tell you this was 1966. So, let's just throw that out there. 1966, everyone.
We're in the 60s. The crazy wild
We
60s.
are. So on August 16th, the men told their families that they were heading down to Sao Paulo by bus to pick up supplies for work and to also buy a used car. This is also very odd because Sao Paulo was about 434 miles away from their town that they lived in. And it wasn't true. They ended up going down to Rio. We don't know why they lied to their families about going to a different area. So that in itself is very fishy to me.
Yeah, it's another red flag.
It is. And when they left with 3 million cruceros. I do not know what that translates into as the American dollar. I especially don't know what it would translate into as today's money. But they had 3 million cruceros, which was apparently 3 years worth of their work wages. So they went down to Rio with a very good amount of money on their person.
It's like they took their entire, like they've been saving for this event for years.
Yes.
Ooh. I don't like it. I don't. It's uncomfortable.
But when their bodies were found, they only had $161,000 or cruceros, 161,000 cruceros on them. They spent some of the money, but they still had cash found on their bodies.
Hmm. You don't think maybe the people that found them like pocketed like a little bit of it, was like, hey, maybe we should, take a little
The
bit
little
here?
boy,
Yeah. They pat that boy down.
I don't know. Well, why would he only take some of it and not all of it?
Maybe to not look sus.
Maybe. Pretty smart kid then.
That's what I would have done. I would have been like, I'm just going to take half of this. Excuse me. You guys can keep the other half.
Well, that actually was a main theory at first.
Okay.
But we'll get into that, of course.
Oh my gosh, there's so many getting intos in this one.
Yes, just lots of diving ins. So, back to retracing. They left on August 16th. They arrived the next day by bus, supposedly to buy supplies for work and to buy a used car. Again, their families think they're in Sao Paulo when really they're in Niterói of Rio. Upon arrival, it begins raining. They do what anyone else would do, and they go to a store and buy raincoats. Same raincoats that they were found in on the hill. And then they made their way to a local bar to purchase a bottle of water. And the waitress that helped them at the bar, she notes that Miguel was acting very nervous and continuously looking at his watch. And that was the last known report of them being alive.
This is just getting juicy. Like, keep going.
So back to the scene of where they were found. On that note, that weird note that was talking about taking capsules and the Ohm's law equation, it also said Sunday, one capsule after lunch. Wednesday, one capsule at bedtime. The police are like, what is going on? Why are these two men found dead on a hill? They're not from this area. They're fully dressed in suits. What is up with this empty water bottle? What is this note? Why does it have Ohm's law? What capsules are they taking? Because there were no capsules found anywhere around them. And what the hell are these lead masks?
I'm like trying to think of like some kind of solution to this puzzle, and all I can think about is like that crazy meme where the guy's like aliens. Aliens. Um
Well,
oh, am I right? Is it aliens? No. Is it just murder?
we don't know, actually. Should we use that to transition into our theories?
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of. I mean, if it would have been one guy, then I would be like, well, no, he was just crazy. Like, crazy guy. He maybe had some kind of conspiracy thought in his head that he really believed in, and this was the day to go through with it. But two guys,
Maybe.
I feel like that's kind of culty. Like, maybe they had a religious belief that they made up, or that they thought a certain event was taking place that day, and they were transcending somewhere.
I mean, perhaps. We'll never know. Some theorizing that the police did, their first thought, like we had talked about, was a potential robbery. But what they kept coming back to was, why did they still have several $1,000s? Why was it not all stolen? Which I agree with. I feel that if it was a robbery gone wrong, you would take all the money.
Yeah,
And the robbery doesn't really explain the suits or the note, or the weirdest part being the lead masks, or even the location. Like, what are they doing kind of out away from town on this
yeah.
hill?
It's the mask part that gets me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they had like ski mask or like cloth mask. Like, it's a
No.
very specific like iron mask. Like, who's like, let me
Yeah,
go get my
lead.
iron mask, lead mask. Let me go get my lead mask before we head out today. You know, you never know when you're gonna need it.
Yeah,
Like,
you never know when you're going to need a lead mask. Is that merch?
yeah, that's merch. Was it maybe a suicide pact?
Actually, that's so funny you brought that up, because that is the next theory they have was,
Mm,
is this a potential suicide? Because there was the note found on their body, but the note didn't say anything about dying or going into another space or anything like that. The note just talked about capsules. So they thought, well, maybe they took some kind of poison.
yeah,
Well, even though they weren't able to confirm a cause of death, and partially because the bodies were pretty badly decomposed by the time they were found, but they were not too decomposed to do toxicology reports. Those toxicology reports came up with nothing, completely negative for everything. So they were seemingly clean. They didn't find any trace of any supposed capsule or whatever in their system, and they didn't have any other type of injuries, especially that would connect to a suicide. So they were like, this doesn't really add up for suicide at all.
oh, I'm wondering if
You've
by
already guessed two of the theories, so I'm wondering if you guessed the next one.
I wonder if by capsules they meant like mushroom caps. Can toxicology detect if they were on like psychedelics?
That was definitely a theory, and that does kind of get tossed around. I don't know if they can test for that. I would assume you could test for psychedelic mushrooms. However, I personally don't think that capsules was meant for like mushroom caps, because this note is being translated from Portuguese to English. So it's not being translated from mushroom cap, it's being translated from like whatever their term for capsule is.
Like the pill.
Yeah, that I would need someone to like explain to me from Portuguese if we were going to dissect it from that perspective.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good logic if it translated correctly.
Yes, I think they would have been able to test for some kind of psychedelic. I would assume that has traces.
Yeah, I would assume so, but with the amount of decomposition, maybe that kind of traceage wouldn't be detectable at that point. I was just thinking because like mushrooms are natural and like in comparison to like if you're taking like a deadly poison that might be synthetic or man-made or
Yeah.
something like that, you know?
Well, they were, even though they were pretty decomposed, they were only out there. They would have died on the 17th. They were found on the 20th. So only 3 days.
It doesn't if they're out in the elements, it really doesn't take that long just because they're out in the open. I feel like you decompose a lot faster than if you're like inside because the sun would have been beating down
Mhm.
on them. If it was raining, you've got now you have actual insects and things that are out in the wild. Animals are going to come across you. I feel like decomposition.
Today, Junior.
um, I feel like that happens a lot faster if you're just like laying in a field rather than maybe in your bed. I could be wrong, but it just
No,
to
I think
me
you're right.
it seems like logically it would.
That would make the most sense, especially because when they supposedly died, it was raining.
Oh, see, there you go. All that moisture and dampness and like ugh,
It's so wet.
ugh.
Well, speaking of rain, that's going to take us into the next theory police had, which was a lightning strike. So, yes, it was raining the night that they were last seen, that they supposedly died, but there is no consistency with their bodies to a lightning strike. There was nothing. And the surrounding ground, the grass was seemingly cut at the top, but it wasn't burnt. There was nothing that would suggest lightning strike at all. So they were like, well, I don't know if it's lightning, but you know what's really weird? Locals in the area were reporting seeing weird lights in the sky that night that they were last seen.
Aliens. I knew it. It's just aliens.
Yes,
Aliens.
perhaps. The first report of the lights in the sky that night were from a local woman who was very well respected in her area. Her name was Crescinda. Now, I do not know why she was so respected, but the people in the area had just the utmost respect for this woman. She was driving on the night of the 17th while it was raining, her and her children, and they noticed a egg-shaped object in the sky with a ring around it, and that ring looked like it was made out of fire and it was shooting blue rays out of it.
Aliens.
Aliens.
But it's so premeditated. So like they would like have to know, or unless they were summoning aliens,
We'll get
or
into that for sure.
oh, okay.
But first, back to those reports. So Crescinda calls it in that night and she's like, hey, there's this weird egg shaped thing with a ring of light around it flying around in the sky. I thought I'd report it. So when the police take this report, for some whatever reason, local media gets word of it. And that same week, they start running this story about, oh, local woman sees UFO. Well, after that was published, a whole bunch of other people from that area who knew Crescinda, they also came forward with the same reports of seeing that same UFO that night. And when asked why they didn't come forward earlier, they all said they didn't want to seem crazy. You know, this was the 1960s. I feel like nowadays, I mean, there's still a lot of like weirdness around talking about seeing UFOs or whatever, but I feel like if you tell people nowadays, you're not going to like lose your job. Whereas in the 1960s, it was a little different.
Yeah, nowadays it's everywhere. I feel like nowadays we're very desensitized on aliens and everything. I feel like
Mhm.
you might have like a person that like looks at you like okay, crazy, but back
Yeah.
then it was more like are you okay? I think you need psychiatric help. Like like that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like people
Well,
trusted their
they all,
government so much more back then. They were like, "No, our government would tell us, like they would let us know." There was so much trust. Well, I don't know, it was the 60s. We were in Vietnam. We were kind of starting to lose our trust in our government, but not like
yeah.
today where we're like
Yeah.
going to speak our mind.
Well, and this was in Brazil, and I don't know what that was. Zoom, it was
Ooh.
way different.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I forgot you had taken me over to Brazil. Oh, yeah. No,
Hmm.
I'm sure
Another
you
trip.
just don't. I'm sure you just don't speak about things like that. I would assume it'd be quite different.
Yeah, but they had so much respect for Crescinda, the woman who initially reported it, so they were like, "It's safe. Like, if she can talk about this, we can too."
Interesting. And there was no like why she was so respected, or was she older? Was she like the nana of the community where everyone was just like that
I
type?
don't know.
I would
I
assume.
couldn't figure anything. It's hard. A lot of this case was sort of difficult because a lot of the reports and documents have sort of been lost. Part of it was because the translations, it was all Portuguese, it was Brazil in the 1960s. You really only get the general basis of everything. A lot of the like exact or specific documents have been kind of lost. Right after all these UFO claims came out about in relation to the night that these men went missing, the police went down to the town of Campos to do a little more investigating, and they went to go search these men's homes. They find some kind of odd things in the houses. One thing being scraps of lead, and it was the same kind of lead that was found to make these lead masks.
Oh,
And that tells the authorities, okay, so they probably made these masks. They didn't buy them, they made them themselves. There are little bits of lead left over here in their house from this. So that to me is very interesting.
it's very yeah, they 'cause they had to get the lead and they had to like think about how to make these masks. There's like a lot of preparation for whatever's happening here.
Yeah. And it's odd, they're just electronic repairmen. And it's like they're just making lead masks and
Would
it's so odd.
But if they're repairing electronics, maybe they use the lead to rewire things. So maybe
Perhaps
they had
like
that at their
energetic
disposal.
conduction, like the
Yeah.
Ohm's law, like the energy conducting and proportionate to this and that. Yeah, like on the note.
So maybe that just all has to do with their occupation. But still, like, why are
Perhaps.
they making a mask all of a sudden and wearing suits? Yeah,
Yes.
continue.
Well, so alongside that, what was even weirder is that they find some books. These books were on scientific spiritualism.
Here we
So
go.
this is where it gets really odd. Let's start with what is scientific spiritualism. This is a form of spiritualism that had stemmed from spiritualism of the mid late teen. No, I'm having a stroke. It stemmed from spiritualism that emerged in the mid 1800s. It was all about connecting to the other side. It was this belief that you could contact the spirits of the dead. There was this huge rise in mediumship and seances. A lot of it was kind of fueled by scam artists at the time. I like to believe there were a lot of genuine spiritualists as well that were making real contact because you and I both know that is possible.
Yeah.
But scientific spiritualism, while being rooted in this 1800s idea of spiritualism, the main difference is that they use observable scientific methods to practice contacting these other spirits. The definition that I have for scientific spiritualism is a theory or practice of combining elements of spirituality with scientific inquiry, aiming to uncover deeper truths about nature, consciousness, the universe, and our place in it. I'm very
Hmm.
into. I'm like, I want to join this.
You'd be the first one to sign up for some crazy cult. You'd be like telling me about it. I'd be like, Spencer, that's a cult. And you'd be like, yeah, but it's interesting. I kind of believe
Yeah,
them.
but we get cool glasses made of
we
lead.
get, we get like, we get bubble wrap suits, so it's all good.
Just we
Oh,
just can't go up to Vintam Hill.
yeah. So yeah, it's starting to look a lot to me like a ritual, like some kind of
Hmm.
passing over to the other side, maybe. Oh, it's just
Yes.
like what was in those capsules. So, like on day one, on day two, you've got the mask set up. They're also dressed up for this event.
Yeah,
Like, we,
very nice. Full
yeah,
suits.
They're very dressed up. They've already made an alibi of like, hey, we're going here for the day. So nobody's like, where are they? They're missing. Where did they go? We're going over here, but then they go somewhere else.
Mhm.
It's very planned out.
It
And I know I
is.
keep saying that, but like planned out to a way that it's not. I don't believe it was a murder, a robbery, accidental lightning, a freaking nature. Maybe a suicide pack is the closest thing I can think of, like the Kool-Aid people that drink the Kool-Aid.
Was that in relation to that comet, that cult?
Yeah, Oh,
Heaven's
and then
Gate.
Heaven's Gates.
Okay. Well, so they had, like I said, they found these scientific spiritualistic books. In those books, they noticed that there were certain passages that had been highlighted. These highlighted passages were about contacting certain beings, and when you specifically extraterrestrials, and when you contact them, according to this book, these beings will emit a light so bright that in order to protect your eyes, you need glasses made out of lead.
Lead.
Manuel, one of the men who was found dead, his wife, she did confirm that the men were scientific spiritualists, and a lot of the electronic repairmen in the area were also scientific spiritualists, and they were all working together in a secret society, and they would
Of
get together
course.
to discuss contacting spirits and aliens, and they would hold seances and do these rituals together. And I'm just like blown away that this is like the local electronic repairmen, these electricians are all doing this secret society stuff to contact aliens. I'm obsessed.
The, all the electricians in the area are in a cult together. Like, did they just like? How did this transpire to where they were just like, hey, I like electricity and you like electricity.
Let's
Like,
summon aliens.
you want to join my cult? This is just wildness all
It
over the
is.
place.
Well, they're not a cult, they're a secret society. Because a
Oh,
cult you
okay.
can't leave
That's
by
true. Oh,
definition.
so like if they lose their job as an electrician, are they not allowed to be a part of the society? It's like, sorry,
You know,
brother.
I have, like, well, you didn't work with Con Ed, so out of the religion.
It looks like you're on your own now, buddy. You can't sit with us.
I don't know how that works. I wish I could, like, reach out to these
I bet you
elec
do.
these electricians.
I bet you do. You're like, I've got some electrical problems over here. Come on
I
down. Let me
Actually,
pick
I'm
your
having water
brain.
issues in my apartment today.
It's always an issue over there somewhere.
I know. Well, anyway, so actually, I really could use their help, knowing how much all the issues I have with electricity and tech.
That's just you. I don't think there's any amount of help in the world that's
I mean,
gonna.
if we can summon aliens to help us to figure it out,
Maybe you summoning aliens is where you're having your tech issues to begin with. Maybe
yeah,
they
their
put
energy's just like stuck and it's messing up everything electronic in my life at all times.
literally everything. I can't with you and your electronics.
Hmm. Well,
But here we are.
yeah, it's been working okay.
Are you knocking on wood right now, sir?
I just did.
Okay, thank you, princess.
Anyway, Princess will dive back in.
All right.
So, one of these electronic repairmen, Alicio, he was a part of their little secret society and he worked pretty closely with the two men. He actually became the police's first suspect because he was so close to them and he was supposedly one of the last people to see them. So the police start interviewing and talking to Alicio, and Alicio starts giving them quite a bit of very fascinating information. He explains that they would get together and conduct rituals and experiments to contact aliens, specifically aliens on Mars. And this idea was that, like, rooted in the traditional spiritualism, they thought if you can contact a spirit of the dead, you should also be able to contact the spirit of the living. And if you can contact a spirit that's alive, why not contact them on another planet? So their intention was to contact life on Mars. And I don't really know what the intent was. Like, I don't know what they were getting out of it, but because it's also rooted in understanding your place within nature and the universe, there must be something you get out of it that like some kind of spiritual evolution, I assume.
Or maybe just proof.
Yeah, just I would really just do it for fun.
Yeah, I yes you would.
Mm,
Um I think maybe also just proof this works. We're not crazy, like what we're believing in is
yeah.
absolutely correct. It can be done. We've proved it can be done. Just validation, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Validation.
Yeah. Well, Alicia went on to explain that him and these two men, Manuel and Miguel, they had built this device to contact aliens. And when they first fired it up, it exploded. And when it exploded, this unknown dust or white powder sprinkles down all around them. And they were like, okay, well, that was very odd and that didn't really work. So let's try it again. This time they go down to the beach to try it. And he tells this man, Alicio, he tells the police that while they're doing this experiment, summoning aliens on the beach, this large, bright object appears in the sky and it seemed to be coming down towards them. And then it made a big flash of light, a large bang, and they described it as sounding like a bomb.
So an unknown substance of did they was it not something that they used to make the device with?
I have no clue that this was the only thing discussed about it was Alicio saying that this strange dust sprinkles around them. And you know what's crazy? It happened at the beach too.
Oh
After
my
the loud
god.
bang, he said that the beach around them was sprinkled in this white dust.
Interesting.
The
I would
aliens are just a bunch of cokeheads.
maybe. Oh, I mean, it would
They're
make
down
sense.
in Miami.
They're down in Miami partying it up. Well, we did just have those aliens at the mall in Miami.
Oh
So
yeah, in Miami. They were tall, right?
yeah, the tall ones. Yeah, they were down there getting their hookup.
That that brings us back to the case. I just anyway, I just chugged that glass of wine.
You all right, honey?
Yeah, it's so yummy. It's just I never say yummy. Anyway, back to that loud bang and flash.
Oh god.
So, what's fascinating is that this loud explosion that this man Alicia was describing happened was actually documented by Brazilian military, and they all heard it. They actually, the Brazilian Navy and Air Force, they launched a whole investigation into what that sound was because it was so loud and so random and they couldn't figure it out. They were like, oh my God, did a bomb just go off? Nothing was ever found. One thing interesting to note is that the Navy and the Air Force, Brazilian Navy and Air Force, they were picking up on strange radio signals that they couldn't trace back to anything. So that
So
right there confirms that this, at
yeah,
least the loud noise actually happened.
yeah, that's not something that was just somebody said and another person was like, oh yeah, I heard that too.
Mm-hmm.
So we have actual evidence of the occurrence.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. But that'll take us back into the theories. And our next theory is going to take us 2 years into the future. June of 1968, a witness comes forward saying that they saw the two men get in a Jeep in Niederoy, that they were taken to the area where they ended up being found. The driver was a foreign looking blonde man. The police were like, okay, cool, we have a lead. But when they investigated it, nothing ever came up. It all just led to dead ends. No one else could corroborate this. The witness that came forward couldn't really confirm anything. This ended up just going nowhere and being considered a false witness claim.
No help. No help there.
No. But then we have someone come forward a little bit later by the name of Hamilton Bazzani, and he comes forward confessing to murdering both of these men.
I always feel for some reason there's always some sick person that just want attention so bad that they're like, oh, I'll just, I'll commit to murder. Yeah, I'll claim I murdered him. Because even serial killer cases, so many cases, like there's always some wacko that comes forward and was like, yep, I murdered him. That was me. But then when they get in the nitty gritty of it, they're like, dude, you have no details. And what you're saying doesn't match with evidence. So get out of here.
That's exactly what happened. The man that confessed it, Hamilton Bazzani, he was literally already in jail for something else. I don't know what. It wasn't clear, but he was
Oh,
in prison.
shocking.
And he stated that he had met these men during a seance and he noticed that they had a bunch of cash on them. Remember, they had the 3 million
Yeah.
peseros? And he decided that he would feed them poison and take their money. And the police were like, okay, what else? And that was it. And when the police investigated this, they couldn't find anything to prove it.
Well, at this point, it was probably the note and stuff was probably public knowledge. Wouldn't you think?
Yes,
Yeah.
it was.
So, but then the toxicology, like I said, comes back with nothing, and he probably didn't know that. So he was probably just saying, oh yeah, it was poison because of the public knowledge of the capsules. Again, I don't understand these people that do this. It's the most annoying thing.
Well,
It's
the
just
police, they realized that this was just crazy and it was a dead end, false confession. And around this time, they actually were like, well, it's just unsolved. But instead of just leaving it cold, they closed the case completely. Um, so, yes, this is a cold case, but it was closed and kind of just ignored ever since, which to me is fishy. It's very
yeah.
fishy.
I guess they do things different down there. I didn't know you could just close it
Maybe.
if it's cold.
But I feel okay, so there is more. So let's keep
Okay.
going because that kind of wraps up the lead mask case for these two men who were found dead in Rio. But after this, in 1966, there was a whole rise in UFO sightings at the time. And people could say, "Oh, it's because like a UFO hysteria hit everybody and or like it was just in mass media or maybe there were more aliens in the area, maybe there was some kind of government thing going on." But one specific UFO sighting that I want to note, this one happened a few years before 1966. So this was in January of 1958. A Brazilian ship was setting sail from the island of Trindade, but this area that the sail was setting ship was about 168 miles from Rio, but the captain, some of the crew members, and several scientists that were on board the ship all noticed an object flying around in the sky with a ring around it. And remember the UFO that was seen the night that the men died, Manuel and Miguel, was an egg shaped UFO with a ring of light around it. So I found that very odd that not too far from where the men die, there's a very similar type of UFO seen less than 10 years prior.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I feel like I don't know, this time period too was like where we were really starting to like see some UFOs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I would think the same aliens would visit the same place twice, probably. So if
Perhaps.
it's been seen twice, it's if it's been seen twice in the same area, to me, that's kind of very evidential that there was something going on in that area, not just a fluke or somebody saying that they saw something. Because now you've got two different time periods with different aspects from different people.
Mm-hmm. But there's one more thing I want to bring up that's going to be
Ooh.
very, very odd. And this was actually very hard to research because it's another unsolved case from the same area.
Oh, so we have a twofer.
Kind of. But this is just to kind of wrap up this specific lead mask case. In 1962, so remember, these two men that we were just talking about, their bodies were found in 1966. And only 4 years before, in 1962, the body of Hermes Luis Feitosa was found on the same hill that these other two men were found, Vintem Hill. His body was also found fully dressed in a suit, and laying next to him was a lead mask.
Shut up.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Was he an electrician? Was he
I
with?
believe, honestly, I believe so. I think he was, yes, and I don't think I wrote that down. I'm like 90% sure, yes, he was. Now, we
Oh,
don't know the exact date that his body was found, but it was in 1962. There's like not much info on this. I feel like we could do more research on his case if we were in Brazil or had access to like a library from Rio de Janeiro. But
yeah.
in 1962, the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomenon, or NICAP, they published a report from July 30th, 1962, documenting an oval-shaped UFO in Brazil being spotted.
So this
And
is just like an occurrence at this point.
now, it was a different area of Brazil that this UFO was spotted, but this man in a suit with the lead mask was found in the exact same area that these other two men were found, in the exact same way, only 4 years apart. And to me, it's not a coincidence that the same year that this other man dies, in the exact same way that these other two died, the exact same year that he dies, an oval-shaped UFO is seen. And it's weird because that's consistent. The oval shape. What shape is an egg? Remember Crescinda, the respected woman? She saw
Yeah.
an egg-shaped UFO, and this reports an oval-shaped UFO.
Same thing.
Yeah, eggs are literally oval-esque.
Yeah. I think she was just using more of a common term, like it looked
Yeah.
like an
Well, also
egg.
there were like translations and whatnot, but
Yeah.
isn't that absolutely absurd?
I mean, maybe you've got this crazy cult out in Brazil that's actually working for them and things are happening. Maybe they have to make a sacrifice every so, but we've only got the two cases, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not like a every 4 year sacrifice kind of thing.
No. Not that
Um,
we know of.
I mean, I it just seems like it all boils down to this group of people, whatever they're doing. And if they've tried to make devices to communicate, maybe they just got better at it over time.
Yeah, maybe the bodies aren't being left behind anymore.
No, maybe somebody's waiting in the bushes to go like, all right, go scoop up Jim. He's sacrifice done. I don't know. It's just so odd. It's
Do
very hard to wrap your head around. And it looked like it was, if they're dressed up to me, then that's some kind of like formal ceremony. You don't just,
Mhm.
the point of dressing up is it's an important event.
Do you think it was aliens?
Oh yeah. Uh-huh. You
Mm.
know me. I'm like,
Mhm.
I saw a light in the sky, aliens. I'm like, the
I
weather is off today, aliens.
yeah.
It's it just seems like, oh, maybe they were killing themselves as a like to transcend.
Maybe.
I mean,
I
that makes the most sense to me.
But what kind of like the capsules were at such odd times because originally they were supposed to take the capsules. It says 6:30 p.m. swallow capsules. After effect, protect metals, wait for mask signal. But then it also says Sunday, one capsule after lunch. Wednesday, one capsule at bedtime. So if the capsules are killing them, how come they were taking one on Sunday during lunch and then several days later at bedtime? Well, that's all the info I have on you for the lead mask case, which actually is the lead mask cases, really. We just don't have enough information on Hermes Louis Feitosa.
It's very interesting. I maybe these guys were onto something.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's possible to contact aliens.
Yeah.
I
I
just
mean,
don't understand why they die. I've never heard
maybe
of anything in regards to alien contact that relates to death. Ever.
maybe they reached out to the wrong group.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't aliens. Maybe the aliens came, but the aliens were too late because a different entity got to them first.
That's making it very complicated. But if they're reaching
Yeah.
out to spiritual thing, I don't know. That seems like a whole lot going on right there.
Maybe it was the Greys they reached out to because they're not always.
Super friendly. Maybe, yeah, maybe they were reaching out to the wrong ones and happened to be heard. And
But what I do find very odd is that this case never really. The first one goes cold. This one goes cold. It kind of just gets brushed aside, and it's not a very famous case. Like, people don't know this case. People know so many other really weird cases that have aliens or strange unsolved disappearances or deaths, but not this one. And to me, this one should be the most famous of them all. It's so odd. And this one has like real documentation on foes. So I can't help but think there's some kind of cover up to it. And Brazil has had a lot of big UFO moments. Like in 1996 in Varginha, Brazil, they had what is considered the Brazilian Roswell incident. Are you familiar with that?
I am not.
Ah,
There's so much going on in Brazil. Should we go?
yeah. Well, I've been in. I was actually going to go last year, but it didn't work out.
I don't know. It's foreign countries kind of scare me a little bit. Like if you're going
Unless it's
outside of
Italy. Let's summon Italian aliens. It aliens.
this is very interesting and like you were saying, I would think this would be something that we would hear on pretty much all the podcasts we listen to because
Mm-hmm.
it is very bizarre and there's no solution to it other than just what you're
Aliens.
well aliens but like what like even if you're just going to say okay yes it was aliens but the conclusion behind why and what took place and why it's the whole that they were dead thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like they didn't disappear and show up later. But also, didn't you say that the bodies were like very decomposed? I wonder if that was the case. And I know we've said that's probably nature, but was the first guy would have been the first one or the second one that was the second case?
The second one we talked about, he was the first. That was
Okay.
1962.
So the first guy, were you able to find if he was like severely decomposed as well within like
Oh,
3-4 days?
I couldn't find anything on
Oh,
him other
gotcha.
than like the basic information that only one source had. I was able to find one article that talks about him because I only had his name being Hermes, and I was like, I need to find his full name. And there was one article after a lot of digging that I found that did talk about him.
Because I was gonna say, like, if the bodies were that decomposed, and maybe they did disappear, because I'm guessing things would be different in space, and traveling back might be faster. Or like, we really don't have the knowledge of how that all works and
Mm-mm.
time and all that. Maybe they were taken, and when they were brought back, that's maybe why they were so decomposed here. I mean, that could be a
Maybe.
theory.
I can't help but think that the way that the grass was sort of bluntly cut around them, like
There's
a
no
crop circle,
a crop
which
circle.
literally it's been documented that the crop circles the grass or the grain, whatever it is that is cut in that area, it's cut like bent at a 90-degree angle.
Well, there's
So,
also like microwave radiation found.
yeah, crop circles are literally proven to be something,
Yeah,
not a hoax.
yeah, I love it when people go out there and they try to make one, and it's like the simplest thing you've ever seen. And it's some of them, some people do them well when they're trying to like say
Yeah,
that
if
like
you get like
no,
a ton of people together.
yeah, but also you can always see where they enter and exit,
Yes.
and
Well, it also takes them like several days to make a big one,
yeah,
whereas the really incredible ones that we see happen in the middle of the night, mainly out of nowhere.
there's no exit point, entry point, and for us to think like a bunch of pranksters just decided to go out with some cardboard and stuff around a field.
That's still the official report, and it's
And
been proven that it wasn't real, those hoaxers that And like that's still whatever. Like if you Google crop circles, it says it's confirmed a hoax by these guys from England,
Yeah.
and with like pieces of wood on a rope, and it's like,
Yeah. That's what I
no,
was
that
thinking
literally was
of.
confirmed to be fake.
Because you can't, some of these designs are so insanely detailed. Like, there's no way there's someone out there with a plank and a rope from
No,
12 a.m. to 5 a.m. when the sun rises. And it's like, hurry up, let's get back to the truck.
with making no noise, leaving literally nothing behind, just doing
Mm,
it perfectly.
no. Crop circles are very real.
Yes. Well,
That comes full circle to the grass. Yeah.
mm-hmm. Full crop circle.
It's a full circle. Wow, this was a good one. I loved this
Mm.
one.
Thank you. I'm glad.
So this was refreshing.
Yeah, like
I
a
loved
cool
it.
glass of water.
Or wine.
Yeah.
More like wine.
I guess with that being said, should we wrap it up?
And with that, I guess we're going to say goodnight.
Good night and pleasant nightmares.
Bye.
Bye.